In the heart of Tenochtitlan, young boys learned to fight early. War was not chaos, it was sacred order in motion. From childhood, they were molded into warriors of the sun. Every lesson, every scar, carried divine purpose and discipline. Two schools shaped them, Tulpoch Collie for the commoners' sons, and Comacak for noble youth destined to command. At dawn, they trained with spears, shields, and the atlatl. Their muscles hardened, their spirits sharpened like obsidian blades. They learned endurance through hunger, pain, and silence. Failure wasn't punished with shame. It was erased by blood. The weapons they wielded reflected both art and brutality. The Makuawitl, a wooden sword lined with obsidian blades, could cleave through armor and bone with terrifying precision. The atlatl hurled spears across impossible distances effortlessly. Their shields were painted with gods, jaguars, and serpents, symbols of courage, destiny, and divine fury combined. Strategy guided their warfare more than sheer strength ever did. Aztec armies advanced in disciplined formations, not reckless waves. Scouts moved first, priests blessed the troops, drums thundered behind. Every war began with ritual and ended with sacrifice. Victory was measured not by land, but by captives and glory. For the Aztecs, war was not destruction, it was creation renewed. With Tenochtitlan's rise came ambition, vast and unstoppable. Under kings like Itzcoatl, Moctezuma I, and Ohitzotl, it expanded. Each campaign carried the banner of Huitzilopochtli, god of war. Cities fell, allies formed, tribute poured into the capital endlessly. Itzcoatl first reorganized the empire's power and purpose entirely. He burned old histories, rewriting destiny in the Mexica's favor. Under his reign, the Aztecs seized neighboring cities with cunning. His nephew, Tlaxcala, shaped empire policy and divine ideology. He proclaimed that conquest was sacred duty, not mere expansion. Moctezuma I took this vision further across the valleys. He conquered distant towns, securing trade and tribute routes. Ohitzotl followed, fierce, relentless, and feared by all rivals. Under him, the empire stretched from the Gulf to the Pacific. Each conquest added new lands, languages, and gods to their world. The empire became a living mosaic of peoples and faiths combined. Enemies trembled at the sound of Aztec drums approaching. Each victory was a gift to the gods and proof of divine favor. Not all battles were fought for land or power alone. Some wars bloomed like flowers, ritual, sacred, and deliberate. They were called Ixayoyotl, the flower wars of the Aztecs. Here, combat wasn't chaos. It was ceremony written in blood. Two opposing armies met upon agreed fields of fate. Warriors adorned themselves with bright feathers and sacred colors. Drums beat like thunder, flutes cried like morning winds. Each side fought not to kill, but to capture honorably. Captives were the true prize, offered later upon temple altars. The flower wars also trained warriors and tested courage. They kept military skill sharp during times of peace and order. Cities like Tlaxcala and Huexotzinco became regular opponents in ritual. Each battle fed both pride and religion simultaneously. It was theater and theology, politics and passion all in one. Through these wars, the Aztecs preserved faith and Shah. To be a warrior was to live between life and legend. Honor was measured not by survival, but by sacrifice and bravery. The Aztecs believed fallen warriors rose as companions of the sun. Their spirits followed Huitzilopochtli across the heavens in eternity. Each young soldier longed for the glory of a captured enemy. The first captive earned him the title of Yotiqui Hua, warrior. With 4 captives, he became an eagle or jaguar warrior, elite and revered. These orders symbolized courage, devotion, and proximity to the divine. They wore jaguar skins and eagle feathers as living emblems of gods. In battle, warriors fought with artistry, skill, and spiritual fire. Each strike was a prayer, each wound a divine offering. Captives were taken alive, not in cruelty, but in ritual reverence. Their fate was preordained, to feed the sun with their hearts. Families celebrated their warrior sons who returned victorious and blessed. Their names were sung in ceremonies, their deeds carved into memory. The warrior's life was short, sacred, and immortalized in stone. For in serving the gods through war, he achieved eternal glory. His death wasn't an end, it was transformation into light. By the late 15th century, the empire stood unmatched in Mesoamerica. From the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific's roaring waves, it reigned. Hundreds of cities paid tribute, their riches filling Tenochtitlan's markets. Aztec armies marched in all directions, disciplined, proud, unstoppable. Trade routes stretched through forests, mountains, and desert plains. Messengers carried news swiftly along networks of sacred roads. Every province contributed gold, food, cotton, and soldiers alike. The empire's banners flew high across valleys and volcanoes. Each conquered people bowed to the power of the Triple Alliance. At its zenith, Tenochtitlan glowed like the heart of the sun. Its population soared beyond 200,000 souls in harmony. Temples rose higher, markets expanded, festivals never ceased. The city's wealth and order stunned all who witnessed it. Yet even at its height, shadows began to gather silently. Expansion brought not peace, but resentment and rebellion. Enemies waited, alliances cracked, and omens darkened the sky. Still, for a brief shining moment, the Aztec Empire ruled unchallenged. Its warriors, priests, and emperors believed themselves eternal as the sun. Their world stood at the very peak, on the edge of destiny. The reign of Moctezuma marked the dawn of brilliance. Under his rule, Tenochtitlan blossomed like a divine garden. What began as survival transformed into civilization's triumph entirely. He brought reform, order, and vision to every corner of empire. Moctezuma understood that strength required more than warfare. He reorganized tribute, laws, and social classes with precision. Each city paid goods, gold, or warriors, fueling imperial power. Markets thrived under regulation, and merchants carried wealth afar. Tribute collectors ensured balance. No city grew too poor or proud. He established schools for nobles and commoners alike. Children learned history, astronomy, and the sacred duties of faith. Justice was strict but fair. Corruption met swift punishment. Even nobles bowed before law's equality, a reflection of cosmic order. Through his leadership, famine was conquered with wisdom, not conquest. He built reservoirs, canals, and grain stores for harsh seasons. Temples rose higher, arts flourished, and the people prospered. The empire stood stable, united under divine and royal guidance. Moctezuma was remembered not just as king, but as architect of greatness. 1. This era became a renaissance of the Aztec spirit. Temples, palaces, and poetry flourished like flowers after rain. Artists carved stories into stone, painting gods upon walls vividly. Feather workers turned plumage into radiant mosaics of light and movement. Every brushstroke, every carving carried spiritual and symbolic depth. Art was not vanity. It was devotion made visible. Poets wrote verses that spoke of time, destiny, and death. Among them stood Nezahualcóyotl, poet king of Texcoco, philosopher and dreamer. He wrote of fleeting life, divine creation, and eternal truth. Scribes recorded knowledge in codices, folded books of painted glyphs. They chronicled battles, rituals, genealogies, and divine visions. Through these codices, the Aztecs preserved memory against oblivion. Each page was history, prophecy, and wisdom bound in color. Music filled the city's air. Drums, flutes, and shells together. Festivals became living theaters of art, dance, and sacred meaning. Beauty and intellect intertwined, binding people closer to their gods. It was the height of culture, civilization singing in perfect harmony. Under Moctezuma Tenochtitlan transformed beyond imagination's reach. Temples rose skyward, their stairways kissed by the morning sun. Streets were widened, bridges rebuilt, canals deepened for commerce. Palaces adorned with turquoise, obsidian, and gold shimmered endlessly. The great temple, Templo Mayor, was rebuilt taller and grander. Its twin shrines crowned the skyline, sun and rain united. At its dedication, thousands of captives met their divine fate. The city rejoiced, believing the gods themselves watched in approval. Gardens blossomed in royal courtyards filled with exotic life. Birds from distant lands sang amid flowers and sacred sculptures. Aqueducts brought fresh spring water to fountains and baths. The city became a living paradise upon the lake's silver mirror. Walls glowed with murals depicting gods, creation, and conquest. Every structure echoed faith, beauty, and mathematical harmony. Foreign emissaries marveled, merchants prospered, priests offered thanks. Tenochtitlan was no longer just a city. It was a symbol of divine perfection. When Moctezuma II ascended the throne, the empire trembled slightly. He was wise, devout, and deeply conscious of divine order. But his rule differed, less shared, more absolute, more sacred. He elevated the emperor's role to that of semi-divine figure. No longer was the Tlatoani just a leader, he was chosen by gods. Courtiers and nobles approached him barefoot, eyes cast low in reverence. His word carried the weight of prophecy and fate itself. He surrounded himself with priests, astrologers, and oracles of truth. He reorganized the empire's administration to tighten control completely. Tributes became heavier, inspections stricter, punishments more severe. Officials feared his judgment. Discipline replaced diplomacy gradually. Yet the empire's grandeur continued, unmatched in Mesoamerica's history. Temples expanded, palaces glittered, and markets overflowed with tribute. But beneath the gold, murmurs began, whispers of unrest and pride. Moctezuma ruled with brilliance and burden, power and isolation. He believed his reign was divine destiny, not human governance. In his hands, the empire's brilliance turned toward fragility slowly. At its peak, the Aztec Empire glittered like the heart of the sun. Tenochtitlan pulsed with life, its towers, gardens, and temples radiant. Tribute poured from hundreds of cities across mountains and valleys. The markets brimmed with gold, cacao, jade, and rare feathers. Messengers carried news faster than wind. Armies stood ever ready. The people believed the gods favored their empire above all. Even foreign kings bowed to the might of Tenochtitlan. But with glory came arrogance, a belief in divine untouchability. Rituals grew larger, sacrifices more frequent, omens more feared. Moctezuma began to see signs in the heavens nightly. Strange lights, fiery comets, and whispers of returning gods. He became haunted by prophecy, the return of Quetzalcoatl. His once steady heart filled with doubt, fear, and hesitation. Decisions slowed, counsel ignored, faith twisted into anxiety. The empire stood magnificent, yet cracks ran deep beneath its surface. Arrogance masked fragility, pride concealed an approaching storm. As the sun reached its zenith, shadows lengthened quietly across the lake. The world had never seen such glory, nor sensed its approaching fall. The year 1519 marked the turning of an age. Across the eastern sea, sails pierced the horizon. Great wooden ships, like mountains on waves, approached slowly. Their iron weapons gleamed under a foreign sun. Hernán Cortés, a man of ambition and faith, led them. Driven by gold, glory, and divine destiny, he advanced. To the Mexican world, these strangers seemed otherworldly beings. They rode beasts no one had ever seen before. Their armor shone like the scales of celestial serpents. Whispers carried through markets, temples, and sacred halls. Were these men gods, or heralds of destruction? Messengers rushed from coastal towns to Tenochtitlan. They described thundersticks, fire, and lightning that spoke death. The Mexica priests searched the heavens for answers. Prophecies of returning gods began to stir in memory. And in that moment, the world stood at a crossroad. 1. Courts quickly learned that the land was divided deeply. Beneath Aztec rule, many tribes carried heavy chains of tribute. The Totonacs were the first to offer secret friendship. They shared stories of oppression, sacrifice, and endless taxes. To them, the Spaniards were a possible deliverance. Courts, ever the strategist, saw opportunity in their pain. He promised freedom, protection, and a new dawn. His army grew. Spaniards, Totonacs, interpreters, and soldiers of fortune. Through cunning and charm, he wove an alliance of vengeance. The Tlaxcalans, fierce and proud, fought him at first fiercely. But after battles drenched in blood, they too joined him. They saw in courts a weapon against Tenochtitlan's might. Through every alliance, the Spaniards' shadow stretched further. He built an army not of numbers, but of hatred. The empire's enemies became the empire's downfall. The march toward destiny had begun. Far away in his shimmering palace, Moctezuma too listened. Messengers spoke of men with white skin and thunder weapons, of beasts that ran faster than wind and roared like storms. Moctezuma's heart trembled, not with fear, but divine confusion. He was a scholar, a priest, a ruler chosen by gods. He had read the codices, the ancient prophecies of return. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was foretold to come again. And from the east, on the year one read, he would return. That year had arrived, and with it came courts. The emperor feared he was witnessing prophecy unfold. He ordered priests to read the omens in the stars. Comets burned, earthquakes shook temples, idols wept blood. He sent ambassadors to greet the foreigners with gifts of gold. He hoped generosity would buy time, or perhaps favor. But gold, to the Spaniards, was not a gesture. It was a hunger. Moctezuma's doubt deepened, trapped between faith and reason. Every decision he made would echo through history. Cortés' army marched across the valleys of Mexico. They climbed volcanoes, crossed rivers, and entered sacred lands. Each step revealed a world unlike anything they had known. Cities of stone, markets alive with color and sound, temples reaching for the heavens, built with divine precision. The Spaniards gazed in awe, then greed followed wonder. As they neared the Valley of Mexico, the air changed. Mist rose from the great lake that surrounded the capital. Then they saw it, Tenochtitlan, shining like a vision, built on water, crowned with temples, alive with song. Bridges connected islands of life, canals glimmered under the sun. Courts called it the most beautiful city in the world. To him, it was a marvel. To Moctezuma, a warning. The strangers approached with crosses, cannons, and unseen intentions. The Mexica welcomed them with gifts, yet watched in silence. To civilizations, born of different suns, faced each other. Neither understood the price their meeting would demand. When courts entered Tenochtitlan, the world seemed to hold its breath. Moctezuma descended from his throne to greet him personally. He offered garlands of flowers, gold, and sacred speech. Courts bowed, not in reverence, but calculation. The Spaniards were stunned by the city's order and grandeur. Its causeways, gardens, temples, and markets defied imagination. They lived among the Mexica, guests in a world of gods. But suspicion grew as crosses rose beside ancient idols. The Spaniards demanded gold, idols, and submission to the Mexica priests murmured their gods were being insulted. Moctezuma tried to keep peace, torn between fear and duty. Courts, fearing rebellion, seized the emperor within his own palace. The gods fell silent. The empire trembled in disbelief. Curiosity had become conquest, friendship, captivity. The meeting of two worlds became the collision of destinies. Steel met obsidian, faith met faith. And beneath Tenochtitlan's beauty, the first cracks began to form. The empire's heart trembled beneath the weight of betrayal. Within the Grand Palace, Moctezuma was no longer free. Courts held him captive, veiled in false friendship and fear. The emperor, once divine, now obeyed a foreign tongue. Outside, whispers spread through the city's winding streets. The people watched, their god-king, imprisoned by strangers. Markets fell silent, temples burned with quiet rage. Priests cursed the invaders in the names of their gods. Spanish soldiers melted idols, looted gold, and mocked rituals. The sacred balance of the fifth sun began to crumble. Soon, rebellion flared like fire in the heart of Tenochtitlan. Stones, spears, and arrows rained upon the invaders. The air filled with war drums and desperate cries. The Mexica fought not for riches, but for their soul. Moctezuma stood before his people, torn and broken. Some called him a traitor, others a victim of destiny, and in the chaos, the divine ruler of the Mexica fell. His death, mysterious, mourned, and stained with sorrow. The empire that worshipped him now screamed for vengeance. The Spaniards fled the city under a moonless sky. Rain fell heavy. Drums thundered from the temples above. Cortés' men carried gold, the empire's stolen heart. But the causeways turned to traps, narrow and deadly. Aztec warriors struck from the shadows, fierce and relentless. Spears pierced the night, arrows darkened the heavens. Spanish cries mingled with the roar of vengeance. Men slipped, fell, and drowned beneath golden weight. Thousands died, soldiers, horses, and allies alike. Cortés himself wept beneath a tree at dawn's first light. He called it La Noche Triste, the night of sorrows. Tenochtitlan had won, but at a terrible cost. The city bled, yet still it stood proud. The gods had been honored with rivers of blood. But far away, Cortés' heart burned not with defeat, but resolve. He would return, stronger, ruthless, unstoppable. Months passed, and the invaders did not vanish. Cortés gathered new forces from the coast and beyond. Spanish ships brought soldiers, steel, and disease in equal measure. Thousands of native allies, Tlaxcalans, Totonacs, and others, joined him. They came not as slaves, but as avengers of old wounds. Each carried their own reason, their own vengeance against the Mexica. Cortés forged a new army, baptized in hatred and hope. He marched again toward the Valley of Mexico. Smoke rose where once stood temples and towns. Villages surrendered, exhausted by war and plague. The gods seemed silent, their protection fading like mist. Cortés looked upon the distant lake and smiled. Tenochtitlan shimmered on the horizon. His destiny awaited. The conqueror had returned, and this time he would not flee. The siege began, slow, merciless, and all-consuming. Cortés cut the causeways, blockaded the waters, and starved the city. Ships sailed across Lake Texcoco, armed with cannons and fire. Every bridge burned, every canal ran red with blood. Inside the city, hunger gnawed at warriors and children alike. Water turned foul, and food vanished from the markets. The once mighty Tenochtitlan became a cage of suffering. Disease, the unseen conqueror, swept through the population. Smallpox, brought by the invaders, claimed more lives than war. Temples fell, idols shattered, songs of worship turned to wails. Yet still, the Mexica fought with desperate valor. Every street became a battlefield, every home a fortress. Women carried spears, priests blessed warriors with ashes and tears. The canals filled with bodies, the dead and the defiant. Cortés watched from afar, unmoved, relentless in his conquest. The city that had once dazzled him now burned before his eyes. By August 1521, Tenochtitlan was no more. Its temples lay in ruins, its lakes choked with ash. The cries of the last warriors echoed through empty streets. Cuauhtémoc, the young emperor, fought until all hope was lost. Captured by Cortés, he faced death with royal silence. "Kill me now," he said, "for I have done my duty." His courage became legend, the final ember of the Mexica spirit. The city of the gods fell, but its soul did not die. Upon its ashes, a new city began to rise, Mexico City. The conquerors built churches where temples once touched the sky. Gold flowed to Spain, but the cost was immeasurable. An empire was gone, yet its memory became eternal. The gods of the fifth sun had fallen silent, but not forgotten. Their story endures, in stone, in myth, in every heartbeat of Mexico. The conquest ended an age, but began a legacy. The Mexica were defeated, yet their world still breathes in time's echo. The smoke had settled and silence reigned. Where temples once rose, ashes and bones remained. The sacred island city lay broken, drowned, defeated. Cortés stood amid the ruins, claiming it for Spain. From destruction, he envisioned a new creation, Mexico City. Stone by stone, Tenochtitlan's spirit was buried and rebuilt. Churches rose upon temples, crosses crowned sacred pyramids. The canals were filled, the waters drained and forgotten. The song of the Mexica gave way to foreign bells. A new world was being forced upon ancient soil. The conquerors saw triumph, the natives desecration. The heart of the empire became the jewel of Spain. Yet beneath the streets of this new city, the old gods slept. Their whispers lingered in the stones, defying oblivion quietly. The gods of the fifth sun fell into shadow. The priests, once powerful, were silenced or slain. Temples were destroyed, idols shattered, rituals forbidden. The Spanish friars came bearing crosses and Latin prayers. They baptized the conquered, reshaping souls through holy water. Faith became a battlefield, old versus new, sun versus cross. The sacred calendar ceased, the offerings turned to dust. The Mexican nobility, once divine, were stripped of rank, their power broken, their knowledge dismissed as heathen law. But even under the weight of forced conversion, faith endured. Hidden altars glowed in secret, prayers whispered to forgotten gods. The people bowed to Christ, yet dreamed of Huitzilopochtli. The conquerors built their churches, the conquered hid their hearts. Two worlds collided, and from that collision, a new identity formed. Death lingered long after the swords were sheathed. The invisible conqueror, disease, ravaged what war had spared. Smallpox swept across the valleys, burning through generations. Villages emptied, cities silenced, families erased overnight. 9 of every 10 lives were lost within decades. The air itself seemed cursed, heavy with mourning. Fields lay barren, no hands remained to sow or reap. Spanish overlords claimed the lands of the dead without mercy. Those who survived were chained in labor and despair. The drums of war were replaced by the cries of slaves. The earth drank deeply from centuries of suffering. The empire that had touched the heavens was now dust. And yet, among the ruins, humanity refused to vanish. From pain, a new spirit of endurance began to rise. In the quiet corners of fading villages, memory survived. Elders spoke of gods, heroes, and lost cities by firelight. Through song, craft, and storytelling, the Mexica lived on. Feathers, stones, and pigments carried meanings forbidden by priests. The codices were burned, yet the stories escaped the flames. Mothers whispered ancient prayers beneath Christian hymns softly. Sculptors carved old symbols into church walls in disguise. The empire's wisdom hid within fabrics, dances, and words. Through generations, they passed what history tried to erase. The children of conquest became keepers of two worlds, Spanish in tongue, but Aztec in blood and memory. Their stories became the heartbeat of a buried civilization. Even silenced, the spirit of Tenochtitlan continued to speak. From the ashes of empire rose a new dominion. Spain named it Nueva España, New Spain, a land reborn. Viceroys ruled in the name of a distant king. Church and crown shared power over land and soul. Gold and silver flowed endlessly across the ocean. The native world was reshaped, renamed, and restrained. But beneath the crown's shadow, The Mexica spirit endured. Markets reopened. Festivals returned, though veiled in Christian form. Saints replaced gods, yet the devotion felt the same. Old rhythms echoed through new churches and streets. The Aztec heart beat quietly beneath colonial splendor. Generations grew, mixing blood, language, and destiny. What began as conquest transformed into cultural rebirth. The Mexica did not vanish. They became eternal through change. Centuries passed before the silence began to break. Beneath the streets of modern Mexico, the past stirred. Forgotten stones whispered of temples, gods, and warriors. In the 19th century, explorers began to dig. What they unearthed was more than ancient ruins. It was memory. Statues emerged from earth, like gods returning from dreams. Fragments of temples, idols, and bones told a hidden story. Tenochtitlan had not vanished. It had only slept. Archaeologists brushed away dust, revealing the empire's immortal soul. Each discovery rewove the tapestry Spain had torn apart. The Templo Mayor re-emerged from centuries of shadow. Through excavation came understanding. Through study came reverence. The Mexica rose again, not in arms, but in spirit. Their world, once buried, became history's living voice. As Mexico sought to define itself, the past became its guide. The spirit of the Aztecs returned through pride and art. Pain and power merged to form a new identity. The Mexica were no longer conquered, they were ancestors. Their resilience became the foundation of a modern nation. Artists painted them not as victims, but as heroes. Poets invoked the names of Moctezuma and Cuauhtémoc with honor. The ancient gods lived on in murals and memory. Schools taught their language, their science, their grandeur once more. The blood that once flowed on temple steps now fueled unity. To be Mexican was to inherit both wound and wisdom. Through remembrance, the nation found strength in its own roots. The conquered had become the core of the country's soul. From ancient prophecy came a symbol reborn in time. The Mexica had once seen an eagle devouring a serpent. It perched upon a cactus, a divine sign to settle. That vision led to Tenochtitlan, the empire's sacred birth. Centuries later, it rose again upon the Mexican flag. An eagle on a cactus, still triumphant, still proud. Once a vision of gods, now a nation's heart. The serpent beneath its talons, the eternal struggle of balance, it united myth, history, and destiny into one image. Every flutter of that flag echoes with ancient prophecy. The Aztec dream still soars above modern Mexico's skies. What began as legend endures as living identity. Today, Mexico City stands where gods once walked. Beneath its avenues and towers lies another world entirely. Temples rest beneath subways, pyramids sleep beneath plazas. Every step taken echoes upon layers of forgotten history. 2. The past and present coexist, one above, one below. The Cathedral of the Conquistadors stands upon Aztec foundations. Each bell that rings mingles with ancient chants unheard. The stones remember. They have seen empires rise and fall. In Zocalo Square, the heart of the old city beats still. Tourists walk unaware over the veins of the Mexica. The air itself carries the breath of both centuries. Modern Mexico thrives, but its roots run deep beneath concrete. Tenochtitlan lives, not as ruins, but as rhythm. Around the world, the Aztec story inspires wonder and reflection. Their art, their science, their cosmos captivate every generation anew. Historians marvel at their mastery of astronomy and agriculture. Architects study their cities, poets reimagine their myths. The world sees both brilliance and sorrow in their tale. The tragedy of conquest meets the triumph of endurance. From textbooks to documentaries, their legacy transcends borders. The Mexica spirit speaks of beauty, courage, and loss. A civilization that once ruled the heavens now rules imagination. Their wisdom guides modern minds. Their fate warns of power's fragility. They were not simply a lost empire. They are humanity's reflection. In their rise and fall, the story of all empires unfolds. The Aztec legacy lives, eternal. The empire may have fallen, but its spirit endures. Time buried their temples, yet could not silence their voice. Every stone, every symbol, every myth still burns with memory. The Mexica may have vanished from the earth, but not from the story of humankind. Their gods, myths, and symbols still inspire millions. Huitzilopochtli, the sun warrior, still rises each dawn. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, still flies in legend and art. Their rituals echo in festivals, in murals, in music. In every flame that lights Mexico's heart, the old gods breathe. The world remembers them not through fear, but fascination. Tenochtitlan's stones whisper stories beneath modern streets. Beneath the noise of traffic, ancient chants still linger. The same soil that once drank the blood of warriors now nourishes the roots of a living metropolis. The capital of the conquerors grew from the capital of the conquered. History folded upon itself. Empire built atop empire. And yet, in that layering lies their immortality. A civilization that embraced beauty, power, and fate. They saw life as struggle and sacrifice, yet also creation. Their art spoke of harmony between death and renewal. Their temples aligned with stars, proof of cosmic understanding. They believed that every heartbeat sustained the universe. And in their rise and fall, they became one with the sun's eternal cycle. The Aztecs, forever children of the sun. They lived by its light, fought for its glory. And when darkness came, they entered it with fire in their hearts. Empires crumble, languages fade, but the sun still rises. In every dawn that touches Mexico's sky, they return. In every golden ray, the spirit of Tenochtitlan awakens, not as conquerors, nor as victims, but as eternal symbols of human courage, vision, and destiny. The Aztec Empire ended, but its light, like the sun itself, never truly set.